I'm sorry.
To the sea and the gold we pillaged. Cheers, lad. Ha! Look at the mess you've made, wench.
She's trembling like a frightened thing.
Drink it up. Stop this farce at once. Get your hands off her. Are you all right, lass?
They laughed as beer dripped from her hair, never suspecting the barmaid they humiliated was promised to the deadliest pirate captain in Caribbean history. When Captain Blackwood's shadow filled that tavern doorway, their laughter died, and so did their futures. Some mistakes the ocean never forgives. And tonight, Port Royal would learn why his name makes grown men pray for mercy they'll never receive. The Siren's Call Tavern stank of rum, sweat, and desperation, the signature perfume of every port establishment in Port Royal. Emma wiped down wooden tables worn smooth by decades of pirates, merchants, and sailors trading tailies between ports. Her simple cotton dress, faded from countless washings, marked her as what she was, a girl born to serve those who lived larger lives. 6 years she'd worked these floors. 6 years of dodging wandering hands and enduring crude jokes from men who saw barmaids as part of the tavern's inventory. But Emma had learned to navigate these waters with the same skill captains used to avoid reefs, smile enough to earn tips, deflect enough to maintain dignity, and never, ever show fear. Tonight felt different. The usual crowd had been replaced by a rougher element, mercenaries, ship jumpers, and thieves wearing stolen finery. They occupied the corner tables like an invading force, their laughter too loud, their eyes too hungry. Their leader, a scarred brute named Dalton, had been watching her all evening. His gaze followed her movements with predatory focus that made her skin crawl. She'd served men like him before, men who took what they wanted and justified it later. "Another round, sweetheart," Dalton called out, his voice carrying across the tavern, and put some effort into that smile. "We're paying customers." Emma approached with a tray of tankards, her practiced smile firmly in place. "Of course, sir." "Will there be anything?" His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with bruising force. "There's something different about you, girl." "Too proud for a barmaid. Someone needs to teach you your proper place." "Please, sir. I'm just trying to work." She tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Work? Is that what you call giving us that cold shoulder all night?" His companions laughed, encouraged by rum and their leader's boldness. "Maybe she thinks she's too good for the likes of us, boys." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. The tavern keeper had disappeared into the back room. The other patrons suddenly found their drinks fascinating. This was how it always went. Everyone looked away until the moment passed, until girls like her learned their lessons about reaching above their station. "I apologize if I offended," she started, but Dalton stood abruptly, still gripping her wrist. "Offended? Oh, sweetheart, you've done more than offend." He grabbed a full tankard from the table. "You need to learn some humility." The beer was warm and reeked of stale hops as he poured it slowly over her head. The amber liquid soaked through her hair, running down her face and staining her dress. His friends erupted in laughter, slapping tables and each other's backs as if they'd witnessed the finest entertainment Port Royal had to offer. Emma stood frozen, beard dripping from her chin, humiliation burning hotter than any Caribbean sun. Tears threatened, but she refused to give them the satisfaction. She'd endured worse. She'd survive this. "There we go," Dalton said, releasing her wrist with a shove that nearly sent her sprawling. "That's the proper look for A." The tavern door opened. The sound was ordinary, hinges creaking, humid night air rushing in. But something changed in that instant. The laughter died mid-breath. Dalton's smile froze on his scarred face. Every man in the tavern suddenly found reason to study the floor, the walls, anywhere but the entrance. Emma looked up through beer-soaked hair. A man stood in the doorway, backlit by torches from the street. He wasn't particularly tall, but he filled the space like a storm front fills the horizon. His long, dark hair was tied back, revealing a face that could have been carved from ship's timber-hard, weathered, and absolutely uncompromising. A tricorn hat shadowed eyes that swept the room with casual authority. He wore a captain's coat of deep burgundy over a white shirt open at the collar. Gold chains caught the lamplight. A cutlass hung at his hip with the ease of long familiarity. But it wasn't his weapons or his bearing that commanded the sudden silence. It was recognition. "Captain Blackwood," someone whispered, the name passing through the tavern like a death sentence. The legendary pirate captain took 3 steps into the room, his boots heavy on wooden planks. His gaze locked onto Emma, taking in her soaked hair, her stained dress, the tears she was desperately holding back. Then his eyes shifted to Dalton. The temperature in the tavern dropped 20 degrees. "Gentlemen," Blackwood said softly, his voice carrying despite its low volume, "I seem to have arrived at an interesting moment." Emma had heard the stories. Everyone in Port Royal had heard the story. Captain Elias Blackwood, the scourge of the Caribbean, the man whose black sails sent merchant vessels fleeing without a shot fired. They said he'd send more ships to the bottom than any pirate in living memory. They said Royal Navy captains spoke his name with grudging respect and absolute fear. They said he followed the pirate code with religious devotion and punished those who broke it with permanent solutions. But the man walking toward her looked nothing like the monster from Tavern Talese. His eyes, dark as Caribbean nights, held something she'd never expected to see in a pirate captain's gaze: concern. Real, genuine concern focused entirely on her. Emma. Her name on his lips was a caress and a command. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to find words. Beer still dripped from her hair, and she was acutely aware of how pathetic she must look. But he was looking at her like she was the only person in the room. Like her humiliation mattered more than whatever business had brought the Caribbean, most feared pirate, to this unremarkable tavern. Alton had gone pale, but alcohol and bravado made men stupid. "This doesn't concern you, Captain. Just having a bit of fun with the help." Blackwood didn't even glance at him. He removed his coat with deliberate care and draped it around Emma's shoulders. The fabric still held his warmth and smelled of salt air, leather, and something dark and masculine that made her lightheaded. "Get cleaned up," he said softly, his hand gentle under her chin, tilting her face toward his. "Then go to the back room and wait for me." "But she started. Emma. Just her name, but spoken with such absolute authority that she found herself nodding. He released her, and she hurried toward the back, casting one last glance over her shoulder. Blackwood had turned to face Dalton and his crew. The legendary pirate captain stood relaxed, hands loose at his sides, but something had changed in his posture. This was the man from the stories. This was the predator who'd built his reputation on ships that never reached port. "Now then," Blackwood said, his voice conversational, "let's discuss the concept of respect." Emma paused in the doorway to the back room, unable to look away. Dalton tried to bluster. "Look, we didn't know she was, we were just—" "You poured beer on her head." Blackwood's voice never rose, never lost its almost pleasant tone. That somehow made it worse. "You humiliated her for entertainment. Put your hands on her without permission. She's just a barmaid." Dalton's voice cracked slightly. His companions were edging toward the door, suddenly remembering urgent business elsewhere. "She," Blackwood said, taking one step forward, "is under my protection. Has been for 3 years now, which means you just made the last mistake of your very short career at sea." The tavern had gone absolutely silent. Emma realized she was holding her breath. "I didn't know," Dalton said quickly. "I swear, Captain, if I'd known she was yours, does ignorance excuse the offense?" Blackwood interrupted. "So if you'd known she was mine, you would have shown respect. But you felt free to humiliate her because you thought she was powerless. That tells me everything about your character." He moved closer to Dalton, who seemed to shrink despite being the larger man. "The pirate code has very specific rules about honor, about protecting those who cannot protect themselves, about the consequences when men forget their humanity." "Please," Dalton whispered. "I have a crew. A ship." "Had," Blackwood corrected gently. Past tense. Your quartermaster will assume command in the morning. I suspect he'll be an improvement." One of the tavern's regular patrons, an old sailor named Tom who'd always been kind to Emma, spoke up carefully. "Captain Blackwood, sir? What about the girl? Should someone fetch her back?" Blackwood glanced toward the doorway where Emma still stood frozen. His expression softened infinitesimally. "Emma's sweetheart, I asked you to wait in the back room." The endearment, spoken so naturally in front of a tavern full of witnesses, sent shock through the crowd. Emma fled to the back room, her mind reeling. She'd met Elias 3 years ago when he'd come to the tavern looking, she thought then, like just another sailor. He'd been kind, respectful, funny in a dry way that made her laugh despite herself. They'd talked for hours that first night, and he'd returned every time his ship made port. Slowly, carefully, he'd courted her with a patience that seemed impossible for a man of action. He'd never told her he was a pirate, never mentioned the legendary Captain Blackwood was sitting across from her, sharing rum and stories. She'd fallen for a gentle man with sad eyes who treated her like she mattered. But that same man was currently explaining to Dalton exactly why humiliating Emma had been the last mistake he'd ever made. Emma pressed her ear against the door, heart hammering so hard she could barely hear the conversation in the main room. The wood was thick, but Elias's voice carried that commanding tone that made Royal Navy captains change course. "The ocean keeps many secrets," he was saying. "Secrets about men who forgot their honor, about crews that found themselves suddenly without leadership between ports. The sharks in these waters are particularly well fed, I've noted." "Please!" Dalton's voice had lost all its earlier swagger. "I'll do anything, pay anything. There's nothing you possess that interests me. Your ship will be claimed by someone more worthy. Your crew will learn that cowardice and cruelty have consequences. As for you," a pause that stretched like an executioner's blade. "Well, Davy Jones is always accepting new residents." Emma heard scraping chairs, urgent whispers, the sound of grown men scrambling for the exit, then silence, then footsteps approaching the back room. She stepped away from the door just as Elias opened it. In the lamplight, she could see him clearly, now really see him. The gold chains around his neck weren't decorative. They were captured wealth. The cutlass at his hip bore notches along its guard. His hands, so gentle when he touched her face, were scarred from years of rope work and combat. "Emma," he said quietly, closing the door behind him, "I need you to understand something. You're Captain Blackwood." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, not frightened, but not quite steady either. "The Captain Blackwood, the scourge of the Caribbean, I am. No denial, no explanation, just simple truth. For 3 years, you've been coming to this tavern. 3 years of conversations, and," she gestured helplessly at the space between them, "and you never thought to mention you're the most feared pirate in these waters. Would you have let me court you if you'd known?" His eyes searched her face, vulnerable in a way that seemed impossible for a man of his reputation. Emma opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. "I don't know. Maybe not. Probably not. Pirates are," she struggled for words, "everything they say about you, the ships you've taken, the men who've crossed you and disappeared, the Royal Navy captains who'd rather face a hurricane than your sails. All true," he confirmed, every word. "I've lived by the cutlass for 20 years, Emma. I've made choices that would horrify you, done things that keep me from sleeping most nights, built a reputation on ships that never reached their destinations, and men who learned too late that the ocean doesn't forgive." He moved closer, and she realized she wasn't backing away, wasn't afraid. Should be, probably. Any sane woman would be terrified of the man standing before her, the legendary captain whose name made hardened sailors cross themselves. But this was also the man who'd spent 3 years treating her with absolute respect, who'd never once made her feel like just another barmaid in just another port tavern. who'd listened to her dreams of seeing more than Port Royal's crowded streets and had described sunrises over open water with the passion of a poet. "Why me?" she whispered. "You could have any woman in the Caribbean. Daughters of merchants, governors' nieces, women who actually belong in your world." "Because you saw me," Elias said simply. "Not the legend, not the reputation. You saw a man who was tired of being alone. A man who'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone care whether he came back from the sea." His hand came up slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her cheek with calloused fingers that trembled slightly. "I've sailed every inch of these waters, captured more treasure than most men see in 10 lifetimes, built a reputation that makes grown men weep. But none of it compares to the way you smiled at me that first night, like I was worth knowing. Elias, those men humiliated you because they thought you were powerless, because they saw a barmaid and assumed she existed for their entertainment." His voice hardened. "They'll never make that mistake again. No one in this port will. By morning, every sailor, thief, and merchant from here to Tortuga will know that Emma belongs to Captain Blackwood. That touching you is the last thing they'll ever do." Should probably frighten her, that casual promise of violence, the absolute certainty in his voice. But instead, something warm unfurled in her chest. For 6 years, she'd been invisible, powerless, subject to the whims of any man with coin in his pocket and cruelty in his heart. Now the most dangerous man in the Caribbean was promising that would never happen again. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Elias said, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness, "you make a choice. I can walk out that door and never return. Leave you to your quiet life, free from association with a pirate. Or, his smile was small, almost shy, completely at odds with his fearsome reputation. "Or you acknowledge what's been building between us for 3 years. Accept that I'm yours as much as you're mine. And let me show you what it means to be claimed by a pirate captain." Outside, she could hear the tavern emptying, could imagine Dalton and his crew scrambling for their ship, suddenly remembering urgent business in distant ports, could picture the story spreading through Port Royal like wildfire, the barmaid who belonged to Captain Blackwood, the man foolish enough to cross him, the consequences that followed. Emma looked into the eyes of the Caribbean's most feared pirate and saw her future written there. Dangerous? Absolutely. Probably insane? Definitely. But also adventure, protection, and something that felt remarkably like love from a man who'd forgotten how to feel anything at all. She pulled his coat tighter around her shoulders and smiled. "Show me," she said. The look that crossed his face, relief, joy, possession, tenderness, would have brought her to her knees if his arm hadn't wrapped around her waist, pulling her against a chest that felt like ship's timber wrapped in warm skin. "As my lady commands," Elias murmured against her hair. Then, louder, "But first, we're burning that beer-soaked dress and getting you properly attired. A captain's woman doesn't wear rags." "A captain's woman?" Emma pulled back to look at him. "Is that what I am now?" His grin was pure, pirate dangerous, seductive, and completely honest. "Sweetheart, the moment I walked into this tavern 3 years ago and saw you, you've been mine. Tonight just made it official." From somewhere in the now empty tavern, she heard the tavern keeper's relieved sigh. The crisis had passed. Captain Blackwood had his woman. Port Royal had a new story to whisper over Rumma, about the barmaid who captured the heart of the Caribbean's most feared pirate, and the fools who learned too late that some treasures are protected by consequences the ocean never reveals. Dawn broke over Port Royal with news spreading faster than cannon fire. Captain Blackwood had claimed the tavern girl. By the time Emma woke in Ilias's quarters aboard the Crimson Revenge, every sailor, merchant, and thief in the Caribbean knew her name. The captain's cabin was unlike anything she'd imagined. Maps covered every wall, marked with routes and notations in Elias's precise hand. A massive oak desk held navigation instruments that gleamed in the morning light. But what caught her attention was the bookshelf, dozens of volumes on everything from astronomy to poetry, revealing a mind that craved more than just plunder and violence. "You're awake!" Elias entered carrying a tray with fresh bread, fruit, and coffee that smelled like heaven. He'd changed into a fresh white shirt, his long hair still damp from washing. Without his captain's coat and weapons, he looked almost domestic. Almost. "I've been thinking," Emma said, accepting the coffee gratefully. "About what happens now. I can't just live on your ship. I have responsibilities. A job," he corrected gently, settling beside her. "The tavern keeper received generous compensation for your sudden departure, enough to hire 3 replacements and keep quiet about last night's discussion." "Discussion? Discussion?" She raised an eyebrow. "Is that what we're calling it?" His smile was dangerous. "The less you know about certain business practices, the better you sleep at night. Trust me on this." A knock interrupted them. "Captain?" A deep voice called through the door. "Quartermaster requests a word. It's urgent." Elias's expression shifted instantly from the gentleman sharing breakfast to the legendary captain who commanded absolute authority. "Enter." The man who stepped through was built like a ship's mast, massive, solid, and intimidating. His dark skin bore the scars of countless battles, and his eyes held the sharp intelligence of someone who'd survived 20 years of piracy through skill, not luck. "James," Elias greeted him. "What's wrong?" The quartermaster's gaze flicked to Emma, then back to his captain. "Words reached us from Tortuga. Captain Vane knows about the girl. He's making noise about teaching you a lesson in keeping your attention where it belongs on the Brotherhood, not on civilians." Emma felt Elias go rigid beside her. "Marcus Vane is making threats?" "More than threats, Captain. He's gathering ships, calling in favors from every pirate who owes him. Says you've gone soft, that a captain who chooses a woman over the code isn't fit to fly black sails." The temperature in the cabin dropped. Emma had heard of Marcus Vane, the Butcher of Barbados, they called him. A pirate captain whose cruelty made even other pirates nervous. If Blackwood was feared for his efficiency, Vane was feared for his unpredictability. "How many ships?" Elias asked quietly. 3 confirmed. Maybe more coming. He's anchored off the coast, waiting. James glanced at Emma again. "Captain, the men are loyal, but they're asking questions. They want to know if we're preparing for war over..." He caught himself. "Over a woman?" Elias finished coldly. "Is that what concerns them? That I'd risk this crew for Emma?" "Some of them?" "Yes, sir. The code says..." "I know what the code says, James. I helped write half of it." Elias stood, his presence suddenly filling the cabin. "The code also says a captain's word is law aboard his ship. My word is that Emma stays. Anyone who has a problem with that can find new employment." James nodded slowly. "And Van? Let him come." The promise in those 3 words made Emma's blood run cold. "He wants to test whether I've gone soft. He'll get his answer." "But James," his voice hardened further, "Emma doesn't leave this ship. Not for port. Not for anything. Vane plays dirty, and he knows the fastest way to hurt me." After the quartermaster left, Emma stood on shaking legs. "Elias, I can't be the reason you go to war with another captain. If this Vane person is that dangerous, stop." He pulled her against him, one hand tangling in her hair. "This isn't about you causing problems. This is about Vane seeing an opportunity to challenge me. He's been waiting for any excuse, any perceived weakness. You're not a weakness, Emma. You're the only thing in 20 years that's made me remember why I survived this long. But your crew will follow my orders or find themselves swimming to shore. I didn't build this reputation by letting other men dictate my choices." He tilted her face up, his eyes fierce. "You're mine now. That means I protect you from everything. Storms, Navy, rival captains, and anyone else who thinks they can use you to get to me. Even if it means fighting?" His smile was pure predator. "Sweetheart, I've been fighting since I was 14 years old. The difference is now I have something worth fighting for besides gold and reputation." A commotion on deck interrupted them, shouting, running feet, the unmistakable sound of the crew preparing for action. Elias was out the door before Emma could speak, his cutlass appearing in his hand as if by magic. She followed to find chaos. The crew swarmed across the Crimson Revenge with practiced efficiency-loading cannons, preparing weapons, climbing rigging to unfurl sails. On the horizon, 3 ships approached under black flags, their formation aggressive and unmistakable. "Captain!" the lookout called down. "It's the Devil's Bride, the Hangman's Daughter, and the Widowmaker. Vane's fleet, sir." Elias stood at the rail, studying the approaching vessels with the same intensity he'd once studied her face. Emma could see him calculating distances, wind patterns, tactical advantages. This was Captain Blackwood in his element, the legendary tactician who'd never lost a sea battle. "James," he called out calmly, "battle stations, but we don't fire first. Let's see what terms Vane wants to discuss. And if he wants the girl handed over?" James asked quietly. The look Elias turned on his quartermaster could have frozen the Caribbean itself. "Then we show him why they call us the scourge of these waters. Load the cannons, arm every man, and prepare for the kind of fight that gets sung about in taverns for the next 20 years. Emma watched the approaching ships and realized with crystal clarity that her choice in that tavern back room had consequences she'd never imagined. Men would fight today. Ships might burn. All because a simple barmaid had captured the heart of the Caribbean's most dangerous pirate. And terrifyingly, wonderfully, she wouldn't change a single moment of it. Elias turned back to her, his expression softening just slightly. "Whatever happens next, Emma, know this. I've faced down the Royal Navy, survived hurricanes that sank entire fleets, and built a reputation that makes grown men afraid to speak my name. But nothing I've ever done has mattered as much as choosing you, Elias." He kissed her, quick and hard, then pushed her gently toward the cabin. "Stay below deck until this is over. That's not a request." For once, Emma didn't argue. She could see the steel in his eyes, the absolute certainty that he would do whatever necessary to protect her. As she descended to his cabin, she heard his voice carrying across the water, meeting Vane's challenge with the kind of confidence that had built legends. This was her life now, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, and she wouldn't trade it for all the safe, predictable years she'd left behind. The Devil's Bride pulled alongside the Crimson, Revenge with weapons visible, but not aimed, the pirate equivalent of a tense negotiation. Captain Marcus Vane stood at his rail, a figure that seemed carved from nightmares and rum-soaked legends. Where Elias commanded respect through controlled power, Vane radiated chaos. His scarred face twisted in a grin that held no warmth, and his eyes gleamed with the kind of madness that made even hardened pirates nervous. Gold teeth flashed as he called across the water. "Blackwood! 20 years I've known you, and never thought I'd see the day the scourge of the Caribbean got himself domesticated by a tavern wench." Emma watched from the cabin window, unable to stay hidden despite Elias's orders. She saw him standing at the rail, utterly calm, one hand resting casually on his cutlass. "Marcus," Elias responded evenly, "you've sailed all this way to discuss my personal business? Must be a slow season for actual piracy." Vane's laugh echoed across the water. "Personal business? You've made it everyone's business. The Brotherhood has rules, Blackwood. A captain's first loyalty is to his crew and the code, not to some girl you're keeping warm in your cabin. The code also says a captain's word is law aboard his vessel. Emma is under my protection. That's the end of discussion. Is it, though?" Vane leaned forward, his grin widening. "See, some of us think maybe you've lost your edge. Maybe the great Captain Blackwood has gone soft. Maybe it's time for new leadership in these waters." Emma felt her heart hammering against her ribs. This was her fault. This confrontation, This danger to Elias and his crew, all because she'd been foolish enough to fall for a pirate captain. You're challenging me, Marcus. Say it clearly so there's no confusion later. I'm saying that any captain who puts a woman above his crew deserves what's coming to him. Vane's expression turned cold. I'm saying you have a choice. Send the girl ashore with enough gold to keep her comfortable, or face the consequences of choosing her over brotherhood. And those consequences would be war, old friend. Right here, right now. My 3 ships against your 1. We both know how that ends. Vane gestured to his fleet. I've got enough firepower to send you and your pretty prize straight to Davy Jones. All over some barmaid who'll probably betray you the first time a richer captain comes along. Emma couldn't stay hidden any longer. She burst onto the deck, ignoring James's attempt to stop her, and stood beside Elias at the rail. I'm the one causing this problem, she called across to Vane, so let me be the one to answer. I'm not leaving. Captain Blackwood offered me freedom I never had on land. He treats me with more respect than any respectable man ever did. And if you think I'd betray him for gold, you understand nothing about what we have. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Vane started laughing, a genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. Well, the barmaid has fire. I can see why you keep her, Blackwood. She's got more spine than half the pirates I know. Elias's arm came around Emma's waist, pulling her tight against him. She's not a possession I keep, Marcus. She's my equal, my partner, and anyone who threatens her answers to me. Your equal? Vane's amusement faded. You've really lost your mind. Partners, equals, those are words for merchants and farmers, not for pirates. Then maybe it's time pirates remembered we're more than just thieves and killers. Elias's voice carried across the water with absolute conviction. Maybe it's time we remembered that the code was written to protect freedom for all of us, including the freedom to choose who we love. Emma stared at him. He'd just said, love. Not affection, not attraction, love. In front of his crew and a rival captain. Making it real, making it undeniable. Vane studied them for a long moment. You know what, Blackwood? I came here ready to blow your ship out of the water, teach you a lesson about priorities. But looking at you two, he shook his head. I remember what it was like once, before I lost everything to this life, before I forgot there was anything worth fighting for besides the next prize. Marcus, shut up. I'm not going soft, and I'm not backing down from a fight just because your woman has pretty words. Vane's expression hardened. But I will offer you terms. Prove she's not a weakness. Prove you're still the tactical genius we all know. Beat me in single combat, captain to captain, and I'll acknowledge her as yours, under protection of the entire Brotherhood. And if I refuse, then we find out if one ship can survive against 3. Either way, this ends today. Elias was silent for a moment, his mind clearly working through options. Emma grabbed his arm. Don't do this. There has to be another way. There isn't. He turned to face her, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Emma, this is bigger than just Vane. If I don't stand up for us now, every pirate captain in the Caribbean will think you're a vulnerability they can exploit. I need to show everyone that you make me stronger, not weaker. But single combat is something I've done 100 times. His smile was gentle despite the tension. I told you I've never lost a ship in 20 years. That includes never losing a fight that mattered. And Emma? This matters more than any battle I've ever fought. He kissed her forehead, then turned back to Vane. I accept your terms. Captain to captain, winner takes the girl's fate. Wait. Emma grabbed his coat. If he wins, what happens to me? Vane's grin was sharp. If I win, sweetheart, you get a choice. Go back to shore with enough gold to live comfortably. Or stay with my crew and learn what real piracy looks like. But you'll be free of Blackwood either way. I don't want to be free of him, Emma said quietly, fiercely. That's what none of you understand. I choose to be here. then you'd better hope your captain is as good as his reputation. Vane drew his cutlass, the blade catching Caribbean sunlight. Clear the deck. Let's settle this, the pirate waste steel against steel, and may the best captain win. Elias removed his coat, handing it to Emma. Hold this for me? She took it with shaking hands. Promise me you'll be careful. Sweetheart, I'm about to fight for you in front of 2 crews and prove that loving you makes me the most dangerous man in the Caribbean. His smile was pure confidence. Careful doesn't enter into it. But winning? That's guaranteed. As the crews cleared space for the fight, Emma found herself standing with James, who placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. The captain's never lost a duel, miss. He won't start today, but Vane is a good fighter. Maybe even a great one. But he's fighting for pride and reputation. The captain's fighting for you. There's a difference. Emma watched Elias step into the clear space on deck, cutlass in hand, his entire bearing radiating lethal competence. This was Captain Blackwood stripped to his essence. No games, no tricks, just pure skill and determination. And she realized James was right. Elias would win. Not because he was better armed or stronger, but because losing meant losing her, and that simply wasn't something he would allow. Vane stepped onto the Crimson Revenge with his own blade drawn, his scarred face split in a fierce grin. Let's see if love really makes you stronger, old friend. You're about to find out, Elias replied calmly. May the best captain win. The 2 pirates circled each other and Emma held her breath, watching the man she loved prepare to fight for their future. The fight began with the clash of steel on steel, the sound ringing across both ships as 2 legendary captains met in combat. Emma's heart hammered as she watched Elias's move, fluid, controlled, every motion precise as a navigator's calculation. Vane attacked with brutal aggression, his blade a blur of slashing strikes meant to overwhelm through sheer ferocity. But Elias met each attack with economy of movement, deflecting rather than blocking, conserving energy while his opponent spent it freely. He's analyzing him, James murmured beside Emma, watching for patterns, finding weaknesses. The captain fights like he's sales patient until the perfect moment. Emma couldn't look away. This was Elias in his element, doing what he'd done for 20 years, surviving against impossible odds through skill and strategic thinking. But this time, the stakes were higher than any treasure or ship. Vane pressed forward, driving Elias back toward the rail. The watching crews held their breath. For a moment, it looked like the legendary Blackwood might actually lose. Then Elias moved. It was so fast, Emma almost missed it. A feint left, a spin right, and suddenly his blade was at Vane's throat while Vane's sword clattered to the deck. The entire sequence took maybe 3 seconds, but it was executed with the kind of mastery that only came from decades at sea. Yield, Elias said quietly. Not a question, a fact. Vane stood absolutely still, eyes locked on Elias's face. You've been holding back this whole fight. Of course I have. You're not my enemy, Marcus. You're just a man who forgot what it means to fight for something beyond yourself. Elias lowered his blade. I could kill you right now. Take your ships, scatter your crew, erase you from Caribbean waters. But that's not who I am anymore. Because of her. Vane glanced at Emma. She really has changed you. She reminded me who I was before. This life hardened me into something cold and ruthless. Elias stepped back, sheathing his cutlass. I don't need to kill you to prove my point. You challenged me. I won. Now honor your word. Acknowledge Emma as mine, under protection of the Brotherhood. Vane retrieved his blade slowly, his expression unreadable. Then, to Emma's shock, he smiled, genuine and almost warm. You know what, Blackwood? You're right, I did forget. Forgot there was anything worth having besides the next prize, the next fight. He turned to address both crew, his voice carrying across the ships. Let it be known, Captain Elias Blackwood's woman is under protection of the Brotherhood. Any pirate who threatens her insults her or attempts to use her against him will answer to me personally. And trust me, gentlemen, you don't want that." Cheers erupted from both crews, not just the Crimson Revenge, but Vane's ships as well. Emma felt tears streaming down her face as Elias walked toward her, his eyes holding hers with an intensity that made everything else disappear. "Did I mention I've never lost a fight that mattered?" he said softly, cupping her face in his hands. "Possible," she whispered, laughing through tears. "Completely, utterly impossible. But I'm yours." He kissed her, deep and thorough, while two crews of hardened pirates cheered them on. "Always yours, Emma. From that first night in the tavern until my last breath." Vane cleared his throat. "As touching as this is, I have one more question. Blackwood, what are you going to do with her? Can't keep her on a pirate ship forever. Sooner or later you'll face battles she can't be part of." Elias pulled back just enough to look at Emma. "That's her decision to make. I can offer her protection, adventure, and a life most people only dream about. But the choice has always been hers." Emma looked at the man who'd fought for her, the legendary captain who'd faced down 3 ships in one single combat just to prove she made him stronger. Then she looked at the sea stretching endlessly around them, full of possibilities she'd never imagined in her tavern working days. "I choose this," she said clearly. "I choose you, this ship, this life. Even knowing the dangers. Especially knowing the dangers. Because safe and invisible isn't living. It's just surviving. Then it's settled." Elias grinned at Vane. "She stays. As my partner, my equal, and under protection of every pirate code in these waters." Vane shook his head admiringly. "You're either the bravest man I know, or the craziest. Maybe both." He extended his hand, and Elias clasped it in the warrior's grip. "Fair winds, old friend. And Blackwood? Take care of her. Women like that don't come around twice." "I know," Elias said simply. As Vane's ships prepared to leave, Emma stood at the rail beside Elias, his arm around her waist, watching the Caribbean sun paint the sky in brilliant colors. The Crimson Revenge rocked gently beneath them, home and sanctuary and launching point for adventures she was only beginning to imagine. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now?" Elias turned her to face him, his eyes dancing with mischief and promise. "Now we sail. Maybe to Nassau, maybe to Tortuga, maybe to places that aren't even on the maps. You wanted to see more than Port Royal? I'm going to show you the entire Caribbean. And the dangers? The Royal Navy, rival captains, storms? Will still be there. But so will I." His hand cupped her cheek tenderly. "Emma, I can't promise you safety. Pirates don't get safety. But I can promise you'll never face danger alone. That every morning you'll wake up to something new. That you'll be more than just surviving. You'll be living larger than you ever imagined." "Larger than I imagined is what got us into this mess in the first place," she pointed out, but she was smiling. "True, but look how well it turned out." He gestured to the ship around them, the loyal crew going about their duties, the open sea waiting for their next adventure. "You've got a legendary pirate captain completely devoted to you, protection of the entire Brotherhood, and a ship full of dangerous men who'd follow you into hell if you asked." Emma laughed. "When you put it that way, how can I resist?" "You can't." His kiss was gentle this time, tender in a way that made her heart ache. "Welcome to pirate life, Emma. Fair warning, it's addictive. Once you taste this freedom, you'll never want to go back." She looked into his eyes and saw her entire future written there. Dangerous? Absolutely. Uncertain? Without question. But also filled with more love, adventure, and purpose than 100 safe, predictable lives could offer. "Then let's make sure I never have to," she whispered. As the Crimson Revenge caught wind and sailed toward the horizon, Emma realized she'd finally found what she'd been searching for all those years in Port Royal. Not safety or security or respectability, but home. Home in the arms of a pirate captain who'd moved heaven and earth to keep her. home on a ship that had become her sanctuary, home in a life that was beautifully, terrifyingly, wonderfully unpredictable. The Caribbean sun set in brilliant colors, and Emma smiled against Elias's chest, listening to his heartbeat steady as a ship's chronometer. Somewhere out there, new adventures waited, new dangers, new wonders, new stories that would be told in taverns for years to come. But right now, in this perfect moment, she had everything she'd never known and judging by the way Elias held her, like she was the most precious treasure in all the Caribbean, he felt exactly the same way. The ocean stretched endless before them, full of possibility, and they were ready for all of it.